Hello, welcome to another episode of Good Clean Commander. I am Ashley, and
And my name is Ken.
you
And
remembered.
names are important. Do you know why names are important? Because we're
uh,
playing the name game today.
yes, and it was
You're like,
really fun. Why?
yeah.
I
So
was
the
trying to add
premise of this
suspense.
oh, sorry. Spoiler alert. It's maybe in the name, maybe it's not. So this game, we all built commanders that share our first name, which is interesting that we could do that. And thanks to Universes Beyond, we were able to do that, or at least I was able
Yes.
to do that. So, do you want to tell us who's on this episode? Because that's sort of special.
Yeah, so Olivia, who is my fiance, I sound so pretentious whenever I
Fiance.
use that word. Uh, but she also does the thumbnails and like a lot of the cool animation effects that you see. So, doesn't like magic at all. But we're like, what if I made you a cool vampire deck with your name? And you played with us and with cool friends, and maybe the peer pressure will make you like magic or something. Because this was her
Right.
first real commander game that she ever played. I had played like 1v1 against her just for funsies, and then like I had her try like arena just to help learn. But this was like her
Yeah.
first commander game, so it was really special.
Yeah. And like, no spoiler alert or anything, but she did very well, and so it was exciting and fun to see. She was a huge sport to join us on this
Yeah,
adventure,
she actually
and we have
reads her
Aaron too.
cards. Yes, and Aaron.
Aaron and Aaron.
Aaron, Aaron.
Aaron's playing Aaron, but
Surprise there.
yes, we love you, Aaron. So yeah, without any further ado, we would love you to enjoy our name game
Our
and
vanity
have
game.
our
Good
vanity game. It's all
clean.
about us.
Good clean. Good
Good clean game.
clean game.
Good clean
Good clean.
game.
Good clean
Game.
game.
I'm playing Ken Burling Brawler. This commander is a Boros Spellslinger deck. I look to swing with my commander and shoot out all kinds of sorceries from my hand. And in my starting hand, I have 2 Mountain, a Rogue's Passage, Strike It Rich, Monastery Swiftspear, Brass's Bounty, Disrupt Decorum, and a Mizzix's Mastery. Olive is playing Olivia Crimson Bride. This is an Aristocrats deck that looks to loop powerful creatures using Olivia's attack trigger. And in Olivia's starting hand, they have 2 Swamps, a Temple of Malice, Indulgent Aristocrat, Arcane Signet, Sir Conrad the Grim, and a Callous Blood Mage. Aaron is playing Aaron Benalia's Ruin. His deck looks to flood the board with tokens, then sacrifice them to his commander's ability to pump up his army to victory. And in Aaron's starting hand, he has a Marsh Flats, Isolated Courtyard, Concealed Courtyard, Elias Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim, Alinda the Dusk Rose, Dreadhorde Invasion, and a Flesh Taker. Ashley is playing Ash Party Crasher. This aggressive Borrow deck is all about celebrating and punching face. And in Ashley's starting hand, they have a Snow-Covered Mountain, Sundown Pass, Kur Keep, Deep Known Terramancer, Smuggler's Share, Bastion Protector, and a Platoon Dispenser. I start us off by drawing for turn and playing a mountain. I then use that mountain to cast a Monastery Swiftspear. Moving to combat, I swing my hasty Swiftspear at Aaron. Aaron takes 1, going down to 39. I then pass the turn to Olive. Olive draws and plays a swamp as land for turn. She follows it up by casting an Indulgent Aristocrat. Olive then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron draws and plays a Marsh Flats as land for turn. He pays 1 life and sacrifices it to search up a godless shrine onto the battlefield tapped. Aaron passes the turn to Ashley. Ashley draws for turn and plays a tapped Sundown Pass. She then passes the turn back to me. I untap, draw, and play a mountain. I pay 1 for Strike It Rich. Monastery Swiftspear's prowess ability triggers, giving it +1/+1 until end of turn. Strike It Rich resolves and I make a treasure token. I then move to combat and swing my Swiftspear at Ashley. Ashley takes 2, going down to 38. I pass the turn to Olive. Olive untaps, draws, and plays a swamp. She pays 2 to cast an Arcane Signet. Moving to combat, Olive swings her 1/1 Aristocrat at Ashley. Ashley takes 1, putting her life at 37. Olive gains 1 thanks to the Aristocrat's lifelink, putting her at 41. Olive passes the turn. Aaron untaps, draws, and plays an untapped Concealed Courtyard as land for turn. He pays 2 and casts an Elias Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim. Aaron passes a turn to Ashley. Ashley untaps, draws, and plays a snow-covered mountain. She pays 2 to cast Ash Party Crasher. Moving to combat, Ashley sends her hasty commander at me. Unable to block, I take 2 commander damage, putting me at 38. Ashley passes the turn back to me. I untap, draw, and play a Rogue's Passage as land for turn. I pay 3 to cast my commander, Ken Burling Brawler. I follow that up by sacrificing my treasure to cast a Faithless Looting. Both creatures' prowess abilities trigger, giving them both +1/+1 until end of turn. Faithless Looting resolves, and I draw 2 and discard 2, discarding a Brass's Bounty and a Disrupt Decorum. Moving to combat, I swing my Swift Spirit Aaron. Aaron takes 2, going down to 36. I then pass the turn to Olive. Olive untaps, draws, and plays a tapped Temple of Malice, scrying 1 to the top. She pays 3 and casts a Callous Blood Mage. On ETB, Olive chooses to draw a card and lose a life, putting her back down to 40. Deciding not to attack, Olive passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps, draws, and plays an untapped Isolated Chapel as land for turn. He pays 2 to cast a Dreadhorde Invasion. Aaron then passes the turn to Ashley. Ashley untaps, draws, and plays a Kerr Keep as land for turn. Paying 3, she casts a Smuggler's Share. Ashley then passes the turn back to me. I untap, draw, and play a Plains as land for turn. Moving straight to combat, I tap a mountain to give my commander first strike until end of turn. I swing my 4/2 commander at Ashley. Not wanting to lose her commander, Ashley takes the 4 commander damage, putting her to 34. Upon combat damage, Ken triggers, allowing me to cast a sorcery spell with mana value 4 or less without paying its mana cost. Before casting my free spell, I ask the table how many cards in hand. Ashley has 6, and Olive and Aaron have 5. With this information, I cast a Secret Rendezvous, choosing Ashley. Both Ashley and I each draw 3 cards. During my post-combat main phase, I pay 3 and cast a Jessica's Will. Since Ashley now has 9 cards in hand, I create 9 red mana, and then exile the top 3 cards in my library, hitting all lands. I use 8 of the red mana to overload a Mizzix's Mastery, allowing me to exile all instant and sorcery cards from my graveyard and then cast them without paying their mana cost. I organize the cards in my graveyard in order of cast, starting with the Strike It Rich and ending with the Jessica's Will. I cast Strike It Rich, creating a treasure token. I then cast Brass's Bounty and create a treasure token for each land I control, totaling 4. Next, I cast Secret Rendezvous, choosing Olive this time. Olive and I each draw 3 cards. Then I cast Faithless Looting, drawing 2 and discarding 2 planes. I cast a Disrupt Decorum, goading all creatures I don't control. Lastly, I cast Jessica's Will, once again creating 9 red mana and exiling the top 3 cards in my library. Editor's note, I should not have had 1 floating red mana left over for my first Jessica's Wills, as phases had changed since it was cast. Note, this doesn't really matter in the end because I don't use that mana. I exile a Lay Down Arms, Vanquish the Horde, and a Command Tower. Using 6 of my floating red mana, I cast a Fiendish Duo. Now any damage dealt to my opponents is doubled. Using 3 of the red mana and sacrificing a treasure, I cast a Fire Main Commando. This will allow any player to draw a card as long as they are attacking one of my opponents with 2 or more creatures. Feeling satisfied with how my turn went, I finally pass to Olive. Olive untaps, draws, and plays an Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, as her land for turn. She pays 1 and casts a Soul Ring. It is at this time Ashley remembers her Smuggler's Share triggered at the end of my end step, so she draws a card since I drew 2 or more cards on my turn. Olive then pays 5 to cast Sir Conrad the Grim. Moving to combat, Olive swings her goaded creatures at Ashley. Choosing not to block, Ashley takes 6 damage thanks to the Fiendish Duo doubling the damage. She goes down to 27 life. Editor's note here, Ashley only took 5 damage instead of 6. No, this doesn't affect the outcome of the game. Olive gains 2 from the lifelink, putting her back up to 42 life. Since Olive attacked one of my opponents with 2 or more creatures, Olive draws a card. She then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps, and during his upkeep, Dreadhorde Invasion trigger, and Aaron creates a zombie army token with a +1/+1 counter and loses 1 life. Since a creature entered the battlefield under Aaron's control, Elias Ilkor triggers, gaining Aaron that 1 life back. Aaron draws for turn and plays an untapped Shattered Sanctum as land for turn. He pays 4 and casts Alinda the Dusk Rose. Elias triggers and Aaron gains 1 life, putting him back to 37. Moving to combat, Aaron swings his goaded Death Toucher at Olive. Olive declares no blocks and loses 4 life, putting her to 38. Aaron passes the turn to Ashley. Ashley untaps, draws, and plays a Rogue's Passage. She follows that up by paying 3 for a Welcoming Vampire. Moving to combat, Ashley swings her Go-To Commander at Aaron. Aaron chump blocks with his token. Since a creature died, Alinda, Ellis, and Conrad all trigger. Aaron puts a +1/+1 counter on Alinda. Each of Aaron's opponents lose 1 life from Elias, and then each of Olive's opponents take 1 damage from Conrad. Another editor's note here, since the Fiendish Duo is out and the Conrad actually deals damage, both Ashley and Aaron should be taking 2 damage instead of 1. We don't notice this right away, but we do notice eventually and we adjust accordingly. Ashley passes, discarding down to hand size. I untap, draw, and play a Plains as land for turn. Paying 3 and sacrificing a treasure, I cast a Vexilus Praetor. This creature gives my commander protection from everything. Moving to combat, I swing my Monastery Swiftspear and Fireman Commando at Olive, and my Commander and Fiendish Duo at Aaron. Commando triggers, and I draw a card. Olive blocks the Swiftspear with Conrad and takes 8 damage in the air, putting her to 29. Aaron blocks the Fiendish Duo with Alinda, taking 8 commander damage. Ken triggers on combat damage, and I cast a Seize the Spoils, discarding a card. Spoils triggers, and I draw 2 cards and create a treasure. Swiftspear and Alinda die, meaning several creatures trigger. Ellis triggers, and each of Aaron's opponents lose 1 life. Conrad triggers, and Aaron, Ashley, and myself all lose life. Then Alinda triggers, and Aaron makes 2 +1/+1 vampires with lifelink. Ellis sees these 2 creatures enter, and Aaron gains 2 life. During my post-combat main phase, I pay 1 and cast an Authority of the Consuls. Now whenever a creature enters a battlefield under an opponent's control, they enter tapped and I gain 1 life. I pass the turn and Ashley draws from her Smuggler's Share. Olive untaps, draws, and plays a Drannith Rune as land for turn. She pays 6 and casts her commander, Olivia Crimson Bride. Olivia enters the battlefield tapped and I gain 1 life from the Authority. Olive then pays 1 to cast Akaya's Ghost Form, choosing to have it enchant Olivia. Moving to combat, Olive swings her Callous Blood Mage and Sir Conrad at me. I block the Blood Mage with my Vexilus Praetor, and then take the Conrad damage, going down to 29. Blood Mage dies, triggering Conrad, and each of Olive's opponents are dealt 1 damage. Olive passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps, and during his upkeep, Dreadhorde Invasions triggers, and Aaron creates another zombie army token with a 1/1 counter on it, this time tapped because of the Authority. I gain a life from the creature entering, and Aaron loses a life, then gains it back immediately with the Ellis. He then draws for turn and plays a Swamp. Aaron pays 2 and casts a Flesh Taker. Flesh Taker enters tapped, and both me and Aaron gain 1 life. Aaron follows this up by paying 3 to cast his commander, Aaron Benalia's Ruin. Aaron enters the battlefield, and Aaron and I gain 1 more life. Aaron passes the turn to Ashley. Ashley untaps, draws, and plays a tapped Myriad Landscape. She pays 3 and casts a Bastion Protector. Bastion enters tapped, and I gain 1 life. Bastion gives Ashley's commander +2/+2 and indestructible. Hurting for white mana, Ashley passes the turn. I untap, draw, and play a tapped Temple of Triumph, scrying 1 to the bottom. I go straight to combat and swing my commander and Fiendish Duo at Aaron, and the Fireman Commando at Olive. On attack, Fireman Commando triggers and I draw a card. Olive, unable to block a flyer, takes 8 in the air, putting her down to 20 life. Aaron blocks the Fiendish Duo with one of his vampires, gaining him a life, and then he takes 8 more commander damage, putting him at 16 total. Since the creature died, Conrad triggers and each of Olive's opponents take damage. Then Ellis triggers and each of Aaron's opponents lose a life. Since my commander dealt combat damage, I cast a Cut a Deal without paying its mana cost. Cut a Deal resolves and everyone draws a card and I draw 3. I follow this up by paying 2 to cast a Recoup, giving one of my sorceries in my graveyard flashback until end of turn. I choose the Seize the Spoils and then cast it for 3 mana. I discard a mountain and then draw 2 cards and create a treasure. On my end step, Ashley draws off her Smuggler's Share. I pass my turn, discarding down to hand size. Olive untaps, draws, and plays a mountain. Editor's note here, it's at this point we notice Conrad's trigger deals damage, and thus should be dealing double damage to Ashley and Aaron. We track accordingly from this point on. She pays 4 and casts a Ravenous Chupacabra. Chup enters tapped, and I gain a life, and Olive destroys my Vexilus Praetor. Praetor is destroyed, triggering Conrad. I lose 1 life, and Ashley and Aaron lose 2. Olive next pays 2 mana to sacrifice Chupacabra to the Indulgent Aristocrat, putting a +1/+1 counter on each of her vampires. In response to the Aristocrats trigger, I pay 1 and cast a Swords to Plowshare, targeting Olivia. In response, Olive pays 2 to sacrifice Olivia to the Aristocrats. Swords fizzles and Conrad triggers off Olivia being sacrificed. Kaya's Ghost Form returns Olivia to the battlefield tapped and I gain 1 life. Lastly, the Aristocrats' 2 triggers resolve, putting 2 counters on itself. Another note here, Olivia should have received those counters as well, since she was back on the battlefield by the time those 2 abilities resolved. Olive then passes the turn to Aaron. Aaron untaps, and during his upkeep, Dreadhorde Invasion triggers. In response to the trigger, Aaron pays 1 and sacrifices his zombie army token to his Flesh Taker, giving the Flesh Taker +2/+2 until end of turn. Flesh Taker's second ability triggers since Aaron sacrificed a creature, so he scries 1 and gains a life. Ellis triggers and each of Aaron's opponents lose a life. Conrad triggers and I lose 1 and Ashley and Aaron each lose 2. Dreadhorde Invasion finally triggers and Aaron creates a new tapped zombie army token, losing a life and then regaining that life from the Ellis. I gain my 1 life from the authority of the consuls. Aaron then draws for turn and plays a Plains. He pays 4 to cast Myrel, Shield of Argive. Myrel enters tapped and both Aaron and I each gain a life. Aaron pays 1 and sacks his newly formed zombie to the Flesh Taker. Conrad, Ellis, and Flesh Taker all trigger. Moving to combat, Aaron swings his commander, Flesh Taker, Ellis, and his vampire token all at me. Unable to block, I take 12 damage, dropping me down to 15. Aaron then passes the turn. Ashley untaps and draws for turn. She pays 3 and casts a Jessica's Will of her very own. Since I have the most cards in hand with 6, Ashley creates 6 red floating mana. She exiles a Plains, Clever Concealment, and a God Eternal Oketra. She plays the Plains as her land for turn and then pays 5 for the God Eternal Oketra. Oketra enters tapped and I gain a life. Using her 2 remaining floating mana and her Myriad Landscape, Ashley casts an Urabrask's Forge. Since 2 non-land permanents enter the battlefield under Ashley's control, Ash's Celebration triggers, giving her +1/+1 counter. Moving to combat, Urabrask's Forge triggers. It gets an oil counter, and Ashley creates an X1 Phyrexian Horror Creature token with Trample and Haste, where X is the number of oil counters on Urabrask's Forge. The token sadly enters tapped, and I gain a life. Welcoming Vampire triggers, and Ashley draws a card. Moving to combat, Ashley swings her Commander and Bastion Protector at me, and the Welcoming Vampire at Aaron. Since neither of us are able to block, I take 8 damage, putting me down to 9, and Aaron takes 4, putting him to 13. On Ashley's end step, the Phyrexian Horror token is sacrificed, and Conrad pings me for 1 and Ashley and Aaron for 2. Ashley passes, having to discard down to hand size. I untap, draw, and play a Needle Verge Pathway as land for turn. I pay 3 and cast a Seize the Spotlight. Ken's Prowess triggers, giving him +1/+1 until end of turn. Spotlight resolves, and each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. If a player chooses Fame, I can steal a creature they control until end of turn. If they choose Fortune, I draw a card and create a treasure token. All 3 of my opponents choose Fortune, so I draw 3 and create 3 more treasures. I then pay 7 to cast a Valamachus Lorehold. Moving to combat, I swing my hasty flying Valamachus, and by Firemain Commando at Olive. I swing my commander Aaron, and the Fiendish Duo at Ashley. On attack, Firemain Commander triggers, and I draw a card. Valamachus also triggers, and I look at the top 7 cards in my library. Then I am able to cast an instant or sorcery with mana value less than or equal to Valamachus' power without paying its mana cost. So I look at the top 7, but don't hit any instant or sorcery. With no player able to block and the Fiendish Duo doubling all the damage, I swing out and win the game. GG's!
Well, that was cool. Yeah, lots of interactions.
Listen, I built that deck for this game, and the way I was able to pop off, I laid it to rest immediately after and felt absolutely content, because I don't think that deck will ever do as well as it did in that episode.
I took Ash apart immediately because it was way too hard to try to get the celebration triggers.
Right, yeah. And also, you were hurting for Plains pretty bad, but it happens. Ash is in a better place now.
Am I?
So MVP cards. We'll talk about those. I think there's like two kind of main interactions to highlight here. The first one is that like stupid explosive turn 4 I had, where I was able to cast a free Secret Rendezvous. Who plays that card, right? Have Ash draw a bunch of cards, Jessica's Will into a Mizzix's Mastery, and just explosive. So like that was a fun interaction. But also I think we should highlight as far as MVP was the Sir Conrad and the Fiendish Duo triggers. Obviously, if you watch, we kind of caught on a little late as to like, oh, Sir Conrad deals damage, so we tried to like fix that once we realized that was happening. But it was a combination that just like whittled the board down the entire game with no let up. And it's kind of neat. You learn a lot of these things. Like I would have never been able to tell you Sir Conrad deals damage because I would just assume it lose life because like
yeah, I'm so used to it being like a life loss sort of effect, but I guess it makes sense because you're not like gaining life from Sir Conrad.
Right. But yeah, all in all, it was a blast to play. Big shout out to Aaron and Olive for playing. I know Aaron has played his Aaron deck on the channel before, but it's always fun to kind of see how he's updated and changed it over the years. So
yeah,
big shout out to them, and big shout out to you. Let us know what you thought of the game. And apologies for the kind of mixed up with the triggers and all the pinging. There was a lot. There was a lot of pinging to keep up with.
We were too busy enjoying our vanity of playing ourselves.
You played yourself.
I played yourself.
If you would leave a comment, like, subscribe if you enjoy it. It means a lot to us, and we appreciate you greatly.
Yeah. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Good game.